So salvation, that idea, I think, has been a little distorted in the Western, again, evangelical church. Salvation is not raising your hand, saying a prayer, and then going to heaven when you die. Now, that's kind of offensive, and people might say, ooh, I don't know about that. I just don't see it anywhere in the scriptures, right? I don't see Jesus saying, okay, everyone, okay, I know I just passed out 4,000 fish and loaves. Now close your eyes, bow your head, and then raise your hand. I see your hand over there. I see your hand over there. You just don't see it. Right? He actually says really offensive things. He says, actually, pick up your cross and follow me. Now, a cross is jewelry to us. To them, it was the worst execution device in history and still to this day is. So that's just very different. He says, hey, it's going to suck. You got to die to yourself, but it's also going to be awesome because I am better. I'm a better Savior, so follow me. And I think if you ask someone who follows Jesus, they would say, man, it is hard, that idea of dying to self and cross, but it's so good. And so that's what salvation is not. And I would say what salvation is this idea that when you look at the scriptures, you see this huge narrative, right, of Genesis where it starts in a garden, and there's this Hebrew word called shalom where it means peace and rhythm and kind of fulfillment and kind of fullness. And God creates this world that is beautiful. He creates mankind to go over that world, to steward it, to be a reflector, which is just the way he says it is image of God, to reflect who he is to the rest of the world, and also to build. He gives us a job, right? So the Genesis 1 starts in a garden. Revelation 21, which is the end of the story, ends in a city. It doesn't go garden to garden, which means we got to do something, like we're going somewhere. There's a city to be built. Now, in Genesis 3, we break that. We say, God, I don't really want you. I want your throne. Again, I know what's better than you do. And immediately when we do that, it goes from order to chaos. Like the definition of sin is really just true definition of chaos. It's just everything out of order, everything fractured, everything not working how it's supposed to be working, whether that's sexuality, whether that's relationships or food or money. And now we worship, the Romans 1 says we now, because of sin, worship the creation rather than the creator, which is the definition of sin. You're kind of trading God for his stuff. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I've done that, it doesn't go very well for me because those things can't sustain really what only God was meant to do. And so through that, you see this brokenness. And then all through the scriptures, thousands of years, there's this crazy journey of rebellion, us, God being so gracious and loving and pursuing us, and us still not wanting him. And then there's this kind of epic kind of apex at the person and work of Jesus where he comes, he fully pays for that sin, he fully pays for our brokenness, he takes our shame and our guilt, but not just us personally, but in the cross and the resurrection, he brings restoration to all things. Like he puts things back into shalom and back into order, which is what you see in Revelation 21, where it says at the end of time, God will dwell with his people and he will be our God and we will be his people. And we won't even need the sun because his glory will be so bright and we'll be so intimate and close with him. There will be no more brokenness, no more shame, no more guilt, no more hurt. So that's what salvation is. It's this really large scheme, this cool, awesome story. He invites us into it and he restores all things.